I scraped the leftover turkey off the platter with my fingers, standing over the kitchen sink in my own home. Through the doorway, I could see Marcus and Brittany laughing with their friends around my dining table, the one my late husband refinished 3 summers before he died. They'd set 12 places for Thanksgiving dinner. 11 at the table, 1 on the washing machine in the laundry room, where they'd told me to eat so their guests wouldn't feel crowded. I was 62 years old, and I was eating Thanksgiving dinner standing in my laundry room because my son's wife said my presence made the seating uneven. The turkey was dry. I'd cooked it for 7 hours, basted it every 30 minutes, the way I'd done for 37 years. Brittany had taken credit when the guests arrived, accepting compliments while I stood in the kitchen wearing my apron like a uniform. When I'd tried to join them at the table, she'd smiled, that smile she uses, the one that doesn't reach her eyes, and said, "Helen, would you mind? We have exactly 12 chairs, and with the Hendersons here, the numbers work out perfectly without you. You understand?" Marcus had looked down at his plate. My son, who I'd raised alone after his father died when he was 7, who I'd put through college by working double shifts at the elementary school where I taught, didn't say a word. I understood, all right. I understood that I'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years while they lived in my house rent-free. I understood that I'd been watching their 2 children every day after school while they went to happy hours and gym classes. I understood that my savings account had gone from $48,000 to $11,000 because Marcus kept having emergencies that required my help. Car repairs, dental work, a new laptop, Brittany's sister's wedding in Cancun that they absolutely couldn't miss. I understood that I'd become a ghost in my own life. The washing machine kicked on beneath my paper plate. The spin cycle started, and my turkey breast began sliding toward the edge. I caught it with my hand, and something inside me that had been bending for 3 years finally snapped clean. I'd moved them in after Marcus lost his job at the tech firm. "Just until we get back on our feet, Mom," he'd said. 3 months, tops. That was October 3 years ago. He'd found new work within 2 months. Good work, making $75,000 a year. Brittany worked as a dental hygienist, pulling in another 50. Yet somehow, they never had money. The rent I wasn't charging them, the groceries I bought, the utilities I paid, the childcare I provided for free. It all disappeared into their lives like water into sand. At first, I'd been happy to help. My daughter Rachel had moved to Portland for work 2 years before they'd moved in, and the house felt empty. Having Marcus and his family there felt like purpose, like I was needed. But needed had slowly transformed into used. It started small. Brittany reorganizing my kitchen because my system was inefficient. Marcus telling me I couldn't watch my shows in the living room when he wanted to play video games because the kids need a consistent routine. Then bigger. Them taking my car without asking because Brittany's was better for long trips. Using my credit card for groceries and never paying me back. Last month, Marcus had borrowed $2,000 for what he called an investment opportunity, said he'd repay me by Christmas. When I'd asked about it last week, he'd looked annoyed and said, "Mom, don't be like that. Family doesn't keep score." But they kept score, all right. Every time I asked for basic courtesy, every time I mentioned maybe they should contribute to utilities, Brittany would get quiet and hurt, and Marcus would accuse me of making them feel unwelcome. "After everything we do around here," he'd say, though what they did around here was create mess and expect me to clean it. The worst part was the gradual way I disappeared. Family dinners where they'd talk over me, movie nights where they'd pick the film without asking what I wanted to watch, Marcus telling his kids to give Grandma space when I tried to hug them, like I was a burden they had to tolerate, Brittany rolling her eyes when I spoke, then denying it when I called it out. 3 weeks ago, I'd mentioned to Marcus that I'd been thinking about taking a watercolor class at the community center. Something for me, finally, after years of putting everyone else first. He'd looked up from his phone and said, "That's great, Mom. Who's going to watch the kids on Tuesdays?" The class was on Thursdays. He hadn't even heard me. I'd started sleeping poorly, waking at 3 in the morning with my heart racing, feeling trapped in my own home. Last month, I'd gone to see Dr. Patterson for my annual checkup, and she'd asked if everything was okay. I'd burst into tears in her office, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and forgotten. She'd listened, really listened, then said something that had been haunting me ever since. Helen, in my 30 years of practice, I've seen this pattern before. Adult children who move back home and slowly take over. The parent becomes a guest in their own house, then a servant, then invisible. The only way it changes is if you change it. They won't. Why would they? This arrangement works perfectly for them, but they were my family, my son, my grandchildren. How could I just turn them out? The answer had been eating at me for weeks. You can't. You're being selfish. They need you. What kind of mother chooses herself over her children? Then tonight happened. When the Hendersons and the other guests had arrived at 6, Brittany had intercepted me in the hallway. Helen, I need you to stay in the kitchen until we're done with appetizers. Having too many people in the living room makes it feel crowded. I'd opened my mouth to argue, to say this was my house, my Thanksgiving. But she'd already turned away. I'd stayed in the kitchen. I'd refilled drinks. I'd washed dishes while they laughed. And when Brittany had brought me a plate with 3 slices of dry turkey, a spoonful of cold stuffing, and wilted green beans, the scraped-together remains after everyone else had filled their plates and told me to eat in the laundry room so the seating would work out, I'd taken the plate without a word, because that's what I'd been doing for 3 years. Taking it, accepting it, shrinking myself smaller and smaller until I could fit into the spaces they allowed me. I looked down at my paper plate on the washing machine, at the leftover turkey and cold stuffing, at the laundry detergent bottles and the basket of their dirty clothes that I'd been expected to wash tomorrow. Through the doorway, I could hear Brittany laughing, telling some story about her yoga retreat, the one I'd paid for because she'd said she was so stressed and needed self-care. I set down my plate, walked into the dining room. 12 people looked up at me, conversations trailing into silence. I need everyone to leave, I said. My voice was steady. Strange. It felt like someone else was talking. The dinner is over. Thank you for coming. Brittany laughed. Actually laughed. Helen, what are you doing? We're in the middle of dinner. No, I said. I'm in the middle of my life, and you're all eating in my house, at my table, while I eat leftovers in the laundry room. So the dinner is over. Please go. The guests looked at each other, started gathering their things. Smart people. They could read a room. Marcus stood up, his face red. Mom, what the hell? You're embarrassing us in front of our friends. Marcus, I looked at my son. Do you know how much money I've given you in the last 3 years? He blinked. That's not appropriate right now. $32,000. I calculated it last week. That's not counting the rent you haven't paid, which would be another $54,000. Or the childcare, which a professional service would have charged you another $36,000 for. I've given you $122,000 worth of support in 3 years. And tonight, on Thanksgiving, in my house, you let your wife send me to eat leftovers on the washing machine. We didn't mean it like that, Brittany said. But her voice had changed. Got careful. Yes, you did. I was surprised by how calm I felt, how clear. You meant it exactly like that. This is my house. I'm 62 years old. I'm healthy. I'm capable. And I'm done being treated like a burden in my own home. The guests were filing out now, grabbing coats, murmuring apologies. The Hendersons looked mortified. Good. They should be. They'd been sitting at my table, eating my food, while I stood in the laundry room. When the last guest left, Marcus turned on me. That was completely uncalled for. Do you know how humiliating that was? Not as humiliating as eating Thanksgiving dinner standing over a washing machine. You're being dramatic. Brittany just thought the seating would work better. The seating would work better in the house I own, without me sitting at the table I bought. I looked at them both. I want you out. Both of you. By Sunday. Brittany's face went white. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Where are we supposed to go? Marcus's voice rose. We don't have first and last month's rent saved up. We have the kids to think about. You have two incomes that total over $100,000 a year. You'll figure it out. I did, when your father died and left me with a 7-year-old and a mortgage and no backup plan. You're adults. Act like it. This is insane. Brittany's voice shook. Over a seating arrangement? You're going to throw your son and grandchildren out on the street over where you sat for dinner? No. I felt so tired, suddenly. Tired and light at the same time, like I'd been carrying something heavy so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. I'm not throwing you out over where I sat tonight. I'm asking you to leave because you've been treating me like an unpaid servant for 3 years, and tonight was the moment I realized I'd been letting you. I walked to the front closet, got out my purse, found the spare keys they used for my car and my house. I'll need these back. Now. Marcus stared at me. You're taking the car? It's my car. You have your own. But we need 2 cars with the kids' schedules. That's something you'll need to figure out in your new place. Brittany started crying. The angry kind of crying, where tears come but the face stays hard. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've done for you, we gave up our own place to come live here because you said you were lonely. We've been keeping you company. You moved in because Marcus lost his job and you needed a place to stay rent-free. We've been helping with the house. Marcus fixed the garage door. I've been cleaning. Marcus fixed the garage door with my money and my tools. And Brittany, you cleaning means reorganizing my kitchen and telling me I'm doing it wrong. That's not helping. That's taking over. God, you're so ungrateful. Brittany snatched her purse off the chair. Do you know how many women would love to have their family living with them? You're going to end up alone, bitter and alone. Maybe, I said, but I'll be alone in my own house, eating dinner at my own table, living my own life. I'll take alone over invisible, any day. Marcus grabbed his keys. Fine, we'll go. But don't come crying to us when you need something, when you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you. Something cold settled in my chest. Is that what this has been? An investment? You treat me like garbage now so you can cash in when I'm old and sick? He looked away. Didn't answer. Get out, I said quietly. By Sunday, if you're not gone, I'll start formal eviction proceedings Monday morning. They left, slammed the door. I heard Marcus's car peel out of the driveway, and then the house was silent. So silent. Just me and the half-eaten Thanksgiving dinner spread across my dining room table and 11 dirty plates that needed washing. I sat down in my chair at the head of the table, the one I'd given up 3 years ago because Brittany said it had the best view, and Marcus should sit there because he was the man of the house. I filled a clean plate with turkey and stuffing and green bean casserole, the good portions that were left, not the scraped-together leftovers. I poured myself a glass of the expensive wine they'd opened without asking, and I ate Thanksgiving dinner alone at my own table, in my own house, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like a ghost. The next 2 days were hard. Marcus called 17 times Friday, left voicemails that started angry, turned pleading, ended with guilt trips. The kids are crying. They don't understand why Grandma doesn't want them anymore. How am I supposed to explain this to them? I didn't answer. Didn't call back. Brittany texted, long paragraphs about how hurt she was, how she'd thought we had a good relationship, how she'd bent over backward to make me feel included. I deleted them without reading past the first few lines. Saturday morning, I changed the locks. Called the locksmith at 8 a.m. and had new keys by noon. Felt like a character in a movie doing it. Strong and decisive. Felt like myself again. Maybe for the first time in years. Saturday afternoon, my daughter Rachel called from Portland. Mom? Are you okay? Marcus called me having a complete meltdown about you kicking them out. I told her everything. The 3 years of being invisible. The Thanksgiving dinner in the laundry room. The $122,000. All of it. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I knew something was wrong. The last few times I called, you sounded so tired, So small. But when I asked, you said everything was fine. I thought it was supposed to be fine. He's my son. They're my family. Mom, I'm your family too. And I would never treat you like that. I'm coming home. Rachel, you don't have to. I'm not asking. I'm taking a week off work. I'll be there tomorrow afternoon. You shouldn't be alone right now. But I wasn't alone. Not really. I had myself back. Sunday morning, Marcus and Brittany showed up with a U-Haul at 6 a.m., started loading their things. I stayed inside, watching from the window, drinking coffee. They were rough with the furniture, banging into walls, making as much noise as possible. Fine. They could throw their tantrum, as long as they left. At noon, Marcus knocked on the door. I opened it with the chains still on. We're taking the kids' playground equipment from the backyard, he said. His voice was flat, exhausted. The one you bought them for Christmas. That's fine. And we're leaving this. He held up a piece of paper. It's an itemized list of everything we think you owe us. Rent that we would have made on our apartment if we hadn't moved in here to help you. Time spent doing chores, emotional labor. It comes to about $70,000. We expect payment within 30 days, or we'll sue. I took the paper. Read it. Laughed. Actually laughed, which seemed to surprise him more than anything else I'd done. Marcus, take me to court. Please. I'd love to stand in front of a judge and explain how you think living rent-free in my house for 3 years, during which time I gave you $32,000 in cash and provided another $90,000 in free rent and childcare, means I owe you money. I'd really love to have that conversation in a legal setting. He crumpled the paper, threw it in the yard. You're going to regret this when you're alone and you realize what you gave up, what you threw away over your pride. You're going to regret it so much. Maybe, I said. But it'll be my regret, my choice, my life. He left. The U-Haul pulled away at 1:15. I watched until it disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside and sat on my couch, in my living room, in my quiet house, and cried, big, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep. Not sad crying, not happy crying, just release. Rachel arrived at 4, knocked on the new locks. I let her in, and she hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe, and that was exactly what I needed. Mom, she said, pulling back to look at me. Are you okay? I think so. I think I will be. We ordered pizza, ate it on the couch while watching the movie I wanted to watch. She told me about her job, her boyfriend, her life in Portland. I realized I hadn't really actually talked to her, in months, because every time she called, I'd been busy serving Marcus and Brittany, taking care of their needs, disappearing into their lives. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? Rachel asked. I would have said something to Marcus. I would have helped. I thought I was being a good mother, a good grandmother. I thought that's what family does. Sacrifice, give, put everyone else first. That's not sacrifice, Mom. That's martyrdom. And they weren't appreciating it. They were exploiting it. She took my hand. You taught me something important when I was growing up. You remember when I was in high school and Sarah Peterson kept borrowing my clothes and never returning them? You came home without your favorite sweater. You told me that people will take as much as you let them take. You told me that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat, that I had to teach people how to treat me. She squeezed my hand. You taught me that lesson. Maybe it's time you remembered it yourself. I stayed up late that night, sitting in my bedroom. The house felt different, emptier, yes, but also fuller somehow, like there was space for me again. Monday morning, I called the community center, enrolled in the watercolor class, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Tuesday, I went to the bank, talked to a financial advisor about my remaining $11,000 and how to protect it, how to rebuild. She gave me a pamphlet on financial boundaries with family members. Apparently, it's a common enough problem that they made a pamphlet. Wednesday, I went to Dr. Patterson for a follow-up on the crying episode. She took one look at me and smiled. Helen, you look different. I feel different. What happened? I told her. She listened, nodding. When I finished, she said. I'm proud of you. I know that wasn't easy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The hardest things usually are. But you know what I tell my patients? You can't pour from an empty cup. You were empty. Now you're filling back up. Thursday, I went to my first watercolor class. I was terrible at it. My trees looked like blobs. My sky was muddy. I loved every minute. Rachel stayed through Wednesday, then flew back to Portland. Made me promise to call her twice a week, to visit for Christmas. And Mom? Don't let Marcus guilt you into letting him back in. He needs to learn this lesson. They both do. I know. Do you? Because you're so used to fixing things for him. I do now. Thanksgiving had been 8 days ago. I hadn't heard from Marcus since Sunday. No calls, no texts, nothing. I told myself that was fine, that he needed space to be angry, that eventually he'd realize what happened, and we'd have a conversation, a real conversation, about boundaries and respect. But I also knew he might not. He might stay angry, might tell his kids that Grandma chose herself over them, might paint me as the villain in his story. And I had to be okay with that, because the alternative was going back to being invisible. And I'd rather be the villain in someone else's story than a ghost in my own. Friday morning, 10 days after Thanksgiving, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Marcus standing there, alone. He looked terrible, exhausted, older somehow. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room, stood there looking around, like he was seeing it for the first time. We're staying with Brittany's mother, he said, in her 2-bedroom condo. 4 of us in 2 bedrooms. The kids are sleeping on an air mattress in the living room. I didn't say anything. It's cramped. Brittany's fighting with her mom. The kids keep asking when we're going home. He looked at me. I thought you'd change your mind by now. I thought you'd call and say we could come back. I'm not going to do that. Why not? We're family. Yes, we are. Which is exactly why this had to happen. He sat down on the couch, put his head in his hands. I don't understand. I thought we were helping you, keeping you company. Marcus, look at me. He looked up. Do you know what I was doing when you lived here? What? Disappearing. Bit by bit, day by day, I was vanishing into your life. Do you know what I wanted for my birthday last year? He looked blank. We got you that kitchen gadget that Brittany wanted. I wanted to go to the art museum, spend the afternoon looking at paintings, maybe have lunch at that little cafe. Do you know when the last time I did something just for me was? He shook his head. I can't remember either. That's the problem. I sat down across from him. I love you. I love your children. I would do anything for you. But that doesn't mean I should do everything for you. And it definitely doesn't mean you get to treat me like I don't matter. We didn't treat you like you don't matter. You made me eat Thanksgiving dinner on the washing machine. He flinched, looked away. Brittany said, I don't care what Brittany said. You're my son. You stood there and let it happen. You let her treat me like that for 3 years, and you never once stood up for me. Not once. I didn't want to cause problems. So you let me be the problem instead. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, when Dad died, you were so strong. You handled everything. Went back to work. Took care of me. Never complained. Never fell apart. I guess I just thought you were always okay. That you didn't need anything. I needed you to see me. To treat me like a person, not a resource. I'm sorry. His voice broke. I'm really sorry, Mom. I didn't realize. I should have realized. But I didn't. I know. Can we fix this? I don't know. That depends on you. On both of you? What do you mean? I took a breath. You can't move back in. That part is done. You need to live your own life, stand on your own feet. But if you want a relationship with me, a real relationship, it needs to be different. I'm not a free bank account. I'm not free childcare. I'm not a problem solver you call when things go wrong. I'm your mother, and I deserve respect. We can do that. I'm not finished. If you want to see me, you need to call first. Ask if I'm available. Include me in plans, not as an afterthought. When you visit, you treat this like my house, not your house. And Marcus, this is important. You need to stand up to Brittany. When she disrespects me, you need to say something. Every time. Or this doesn't work. He nodded, wiped his eyes. I can do that. I will do that. And you need to go to therapy. Both of you. Figure out why you felt entitled to treat me that way. Because if you don't deal with it, you'll do it again. Maybe not to me, but to someone. Okay. And one more thing. I'm not giving you any more money. If you have an emergency, you figure it out. You're adults. You make good money. You can handle it. That's fair. We sat in silence. It felt fragile, like something that could break with the wrong word. Can I still bring the kids to visit? He asked. Yes, but call first. And Marcus? I want to see them because I love them, not because you need a babysitter. Do you understand the difference? I do. I do now. He stood up, walked to the door, turned back. For what it's worth, I talked to Rachel. She told me she was proud of you. Said you'd been shrinking yourself for years and she's glad you finally stopped. Rachel's smart. She is. She gets it from you. He opened the door. I'll call you. In a few days. Ask if you want to have lunch or something. Just us. No, Brittany. No kids. Just talk. I'd like that. He left. I closed the door. Stood there in my entryway. In my house. In my life. I didn't know if things would actually change. If Marcus would follow through. If Brittany would respect the boundaries. If we'd ever have the kind of relationship I'd always wanted with my son. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going back. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into spaces other people carved out for me. I wasn't being invisible so other people could shine. I was 62 years old. I'd raised 2 children, alone. I'd worked for 35 years. I'd survived loss and loneliness and heartbreak. I'd earned the right to take up space, to matter, to live my own life. That evening, I made myself dinner. A real dinner, not leftovers. Set the table properly, lit a candle, poured a glass of wine, sat in my chair at the head of my table, and ate slowly, tasting everything, present in my own life. And when I was done, I washed my single plate, dried it, put it away, turned off the lights, went to bed in my quiet house. I slept better that night than I had in 3 years. No racing heart, no 3 a.m. panic, just deep, peaceful sleep. Because I'd finally learned something I should have known all along. You teach people how to treat you, and if you don't teach them, they'll keep taking until there's nothing left. I'd been nothing left. Now I was something again. Someone, myself, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.